Hi, this is Bob Scully, and welcome to another edition of the World Show, Entrepreneurs, the Fiera Series. In a few moments, a man who probably knows more about mining than the miners themselves. He's known as a miner's miner. They come to him, the mining companies, when they want something done, something built, or when they don't know if a mine should even be built. And now, William Shaver, head of DMC Mining Services. As I mentioned at the top of the show, he's a miner's miner. The companies turn to him for advice and sometimes for decision and action. He builds the mines that the investors pay for. Mining is an area where people take huge risks, perhaps for huge reward, or sometimes for no reward at all. It's dramatic. It's never boring. And Bill Shaver, who grew up in a mining town, whose father was a miner, who went to mining school, really has it in his blood. Here he is. William Shaver, you were born in a mining town. You studied mining in college. You're still in mining. It's really in your blood. And so I was curious for anecdotes when I was reading the research, and one that struck me, when you were a kid and you would see a mining project start, you say that you could be sure in that room, if you looked around, that at least one person would not be returning. It was really like war. That's how dangerous it was.
Well, yes, that's, I suppose, true of. And we're talking now about something like 40 years ago. Yeah. So when shaft sinking projects started in those days, the crew would probably be about 25 people. And if the crew was all in the same room, for sure, at the end of that project, which might last a year or 2 years, there would be at least one person that wouldn't be in the room anymore. And that was, I guess, one of the tragedies of the mining business in those days. And of course, as we all know, that's changed dramatically over the years to the extent that it's now safer to work in a mine than it is to work in a hospital or, in fact, work in a restaurant.
And that's what your company tries to ensure. That's one of the things you do.
Absolutely. That's part of the culture of our organization is that we are duty-bound, and our culture is to make sure that we send our people home safe and sound every day.
And do you work for mining promoters sort of in a turnkey style? In other words, they're sitting in an office, they don't have a shovel, they wouldn't know how to use it, but they call you?
Yes, that's exactly right. Most of our work is building mines for mining companies, and in some cases we operate the mines for those organizations. Now, that's not to say that they don't also operate mines, but usually the initial construction of the mine is done by companies like ourselves. And it's because that early construction is usually a relatively short period of time, maybe 1 or 2 years. And of course, it's a very short time frame in terms of the whole life of the operation. So there are some skill sets that we bring to a project that a mining company may or may not have, just because they really don't need them for the whole lifespan of the operation. So we bring those skills to the operation, effectively do the construction, then we leave, and in many cases the mining companies carry on to run those operations. And
none of your clients mind that you belong to a major European copper mining group, and they might be competitors of yours in a sense? That doesn't occur in this industry, or?
Well, it doesn't occur in this industry, I guess, today, in part because we've been in this business for more than 30 years. And historically, we started as a private company, went on to be a public company. That public company got sold. The mining construction portion of that company, in fact, got sold a couple of more times. and so now we're owned by KGHM, which is a very large Polish copper company. And I would say most of our clients connect us back to our history, not to the new owners. So we're seen as a construction company in the mining business. And I don't think anybody really looks seriously at who our owner is, because we basically operate as a standalone company anyway. So it's they see us for our history, for our skills, and for what we can bring to the project.
And since it's fairly specialized, is this an area where there are only a handful of companies doing what you do?
Well, there's probably more than a handful, but in North America, there's maybe 3 handfuls of them. A handful of bigger companies where we fall into, a handful of medium-sized companies, and there's probably more than one handful of smaller
So
companies.
it is competitive.
It is a competitive business, absolutely, yes.
And is price, obviously quality must be important because we're talking about safety and things like that, but is price part of it?
Well, I think there's three key components of what owners are looking for today, and you know, they're probably the things people look in all kinds of businesses. They're looking for safety, they're looking for quality, and they're looking for schedule. And in most cases, if you can deliver those three things, the costs will look after themselves. So
you can set your price.
Cost is an important aspect of it for the owner, obviously, but
not the top priority.
It's not the top priority for most of the clients we work for. Most of the clients we work for, they're looking for a project that's safe, it's done on time, and has the right kind of quality. And
I'm thinking of some cases where I've just read in the paper, and these maybe are not typical, they may be the more spectacular cases, the impediment, the delay, was not due to harder rock formation or something like that. It was due to the community, the local community being up in arms. So since you're in the front lines, do you do some of that, community relations?
Well, absolutely, yeah. That's a very important aspect of our work, and where we are going into communities where there perhaps isn't a mining tradition. There's also, of course, the relationship that we need to establish with First Nation groups in the areas where we work. And usually the mining companies will do the footwork, but of course, if we're the first people on the ground, then we have to start building that relationship with the local people, with the local businesses, with the local community, and being part of that community in terms of sponsoring events perhaps, or supporting the community depending on where it might be. And if there are First Nations involved, then we have to make sure that we look after that relationship, because you know, in most cases they are looking for work, and so we have an obligation to basically undertake what the owners have agreed to do with the First Nations and with the local communities, and if we do our job badly, well, then it will reflect badly on the owner.
There's no way you could come in and bring in your own labor. That used to be done. You bring your top echelon, I suppose, but you must spread the work and the goodies around the local community. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Absolutely, sure. And as you can imagine, if you come into a community and if there are people available in that community to work for you, well, that'll impact your cost in a positive manner and make and give you a higher profile in the community as well, because you know, it's the community that's going to decide whether you're either doing a good job in the community relations or doing a bad job. And so if you hire some people out of the community, immediately you get a bit of a leg up.
And do you face occasionally geological challenges, like your phone rings and somebody on some continent, maybe here in North America, but elsewhere, wants you to build a mine somewhere, they know there's a deposit, you fly out there, you take a look and say, ugh. I mean, have you ever faced some where you look at the formation and so on and it's going to be tough?
Well, yeah, I would say there probably are some situations where the ground conditions and the tectonic conditions of the rock might make it difficult or challenging. You know, and I guess at the end of the day, today I would say that the technology has looked after many of those things. So now we're looking at not the possibility of whether we can do them or not, but what are the cost impacts of the construction method, or of the equipment and material that you need to bring to bear on the problem. And yeah, it's a question of whether you can afford to do it rather than whether it's possible or not. I mean, today we're sinking 2 shafts in Saskatchewan. Those shafts are frozen for 800 meters of shaft depth. So that's where we've taken technology that's available, applied it to a very difficult situation where there's a large amount of overburden, a large amount of water, clays and moving clays, froze all that material, and then now are successfully excavating in the frozen ground.
And something else that you're ideally placed to comment on, and I've often wondered about this, Toronto is a mining center worldwide for stocks. I think the stock exchange has the most listings of mines by market cap. And you also have worked in Sudbury, which billed itself as the mining capital of North America at some point with the nickel and the copper and so on. The old-fashioned mining promoter, trying to drum up interest and going around looking for money and so on. Is that folklore? Is that a figment of the past, or are they still around?
No, those entrepreneurial individuals still exist. And, you know, that's, I would say, part of the heritage of the mining business in Canada. Those people still exist. They're, in many cases, still walking around on the streets of Toronto and Vancouver and other communities in Canada, trying to entice you know, nowadays funds, not necessarily individual investors, but still individual investors are usually the cornerstone of getting some of those projects going. And, you know, some of the projects that we've been involved in, the initial investment came from families, individual groups of individuals, and they put in, you know, I guess the grassroots money to get those projects up and running. And then once there is a story that can be told, well then, of course, then we go around to all of the different financial houses in cities like Toronto and tell them our story, and they convince their principals to put money into those projects. And yeah, so I think the entrepreneurial aspect of mining and the fundraising and so on is still alive and well in Canada and in other parts of the world.
You look like somebody who's enjoyed it and who's still enjoying it, so long life to you and to the company.
Yes, thank you very much. No, we're, I guess I come from a family where my father is still living and well at 98, and so
he doesn't go prospecting.
He doesn't go prospecting anymore, so I have many years ahead of me to enjoy the mining business and life in general.
All right, I wish it upon you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bill Shaver. Rajesh Ahuja and Bill Shaver were our guests this week on Entrepreneurs, the Fiera series of the World Show. I'm Bob Scully. Have a great week. Thanks.